Well, good afternoon if you're joining us live or if you're catching the replay. Tom Urban and I were having a conversation today. I said, Tom, we need to go live and share some of this with people because our discussion has been on real world chimney inspections, real world chimney inspections. And there's so much that you have to cover when you're doing inspections out there in the real world. And Tom, you've been doing real world chimney inspections for about 45, going to get close to 50 years now. So when I say the term real world chimney sweeps, real world chimney inspections, what does that say to you, Tom?
Actually, Jerry, it's a matter of trying to organize and categorize the things that you need to look at when you're out in the field. You're going to have different styles and types of installations that are out there, and you need to be able to accommodate those applications. So what you would do for a masonry fireplace sometimes could be different than you would do for a wood stove. So basically, it's a matter of getting all the right answers and the right questions in the right place. So when you're doing the inspection, it can go in an orderly manner, and at the same time be able to accomplish what you want to do, and that's to see whether or not the appliance or the installation is in a place where it can be used properly.
Yeah. And a couple of years back, Tom, I don't know how many years it was, but those guys at this old house called on you for chimney inspections, and they were wanting to explain it to consumers. Excuse me. So what was this old house looking for that television show when they called in you as an expert to do a chimney inspection? Because I still remember you walking around that house and showing different parts of the chimney and what people need to look at.
Right. Yeah, Jerry, that's really what the essence of it was. I was up there for the 2007 for the Newton project, and I'd worked that day with Mark and Kevin was there. As we're going through that fireplace and noticing the defects we had found along the way, the next thing was the producer said, you had a lot of information. I could see that you're really, trying to get it all in a minute, and I wasn't going to do too well with it. So they said, let's go back and do a reshoot again. Only this time we used one of the producer's houses. And that's where I went through and I went through the process of what I do when I get on a site. I like to look at the outside of it. I like to look at the color of the brick. I like to see whether it's square and plumb. I look at the joints, if it's masonry or if it's whatever, to make sure that it's attached to the house properly. So there's a lot of little things that you go through that your eye wants to, a trained eye can look at and be able to select the things that needs to be brought to the customer's attention.
I think sometimes, Tom, that people are looking and they're centered in on one thing, which is safety. And they're looking at meeting building code standards, present day building code standards. But the other side of the coin is, in all the classes that you and I have taught over the years, and we have probably had thousands of people in our classes, if we take it all the way back into the 80s when we did what we called the Tom and Jerry show around the country and the D&D classes that we did so often. But one of the factors is performance. Is the unit working properly? Because we could have a chimney that meets all the codes, all the standards, but the smoke simply refuses to go up. So in a chimney inspection, how important is it being able to note performance issues?
We can actually break performance issues in a couple of ways, Jerry. One is the performance of the chimney. Can it shed water away from itself? That's one thing that we need to look at. Water, as you know, the chimney's worst enemy. And on top of that all too, if we have a cold, wet chimney, it's really tough to get the thing to work, especially if it's exterior, to work really well, especially in the colder climates. The other thing that we want to look at performance-wise is, can the chimney contain products of combustion? And that's going to be sometimes just smoke staining on the outside. Would be the obvious, would be smoke staining on the face of the fireplace. The doors are jammed, or dampers don't work properly, or the flue is just sized improperly. And so all those things all tend itself to, even though you look at it from a mechanical standpoint, Jerry, we all realize that the reason we did the mechanical things, the measurements we do, is so we want to make sure that the chimney can do what it's supposed to do. And the funny part about it, if it's built the way it's supposed to be built, about 95% of the time it's going to work just fine, unless there's an extenuating circumstances such as negative air issues or other drafting issues that are outside the realm or the scope of the process.
Okay, let me ask you this, Tom. How important is it to be able to document your findings in the proper wording? Why is that so important that someone's got to put it into words, not only that their customer, their client can understand, but also to protect their own liability? How important is that in today's world, Tom?
Today's world is all about information and your ability to basically connect with people. And if you can't write something to where someone could understand it, jargon, a lot of times many chimney professionals kind of get lost in jargon, and they forget that their customer is a layperson who might be a computer scientist to a home chef to a model or whatever, who don't live in the world of chimneydom. So it's very important that you want to communicate with a customer. You want to explain to them what's happening, and to do it in a very I try to do it in a very kind of in a passive way, but I try to do it by suggesting I tell them what the problem is, and I try to explain to them where the defect is, and then an opportunity to either repair it, and also the consequences if they leave it that way. So I think I want to try to give the customer an open, objective, of the observations that we found and the consequences if they don't do something either quickly or sometimes or down the road they're going to have to do. So I think, yeah, Jerry, communication to the customer is vital in this day and age. And in this day and age, we're doing now more visual things. When you get in front of a screen, it's very critical that you explain to the customer, and it's easier to read something to them sometimes than it is to go, we went up and looked on the roof, and we checked on something. That in today's technology, that that doesn't work as well as we'd like it to. So anyway.
Yeah, and like Ted Katuta just added in, right on, guys. Perfect, Tom, perfect explanation of how to word information, because I think we both recognize that a lot of people sometimes can't grasp the right words to actually fill in the blanks to explain it to the customer in a way that the customer can understand, and also one that protects their liability. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. How you say it's like anything else. It's like how you say things to people is critical, and the ability to basically explain it, and tell them and understand the parameters within that explanation. And it's also too, there's kind of a degree. There's sometimes you'll see a defect, and the defect is just a small defect. That small patch or a small repair can be done with it and bring it back to where it needs to be. Then there's other times you have to write language that this is a complete hazard, and you don't want people using it. So you'll explain to them, hey, this is what's going on. These are the parameters. This is our serious concern, and we would suggest that we get this thing repaired before we continue to operate it. So again, how do you write that language to customers is really, really critical in getting that across to them.
Right. Okay, let's take another question that may bamboozle a lot of people, because this is a difficult one. But how important is it to know the code that was in effect at the time that chimney was built? A lot of times we go look at it and we have present day codes and standards, but let's take one example. If we have a chimney and a fireplace that was built in the 1970s, that wasn't required to purge the smoke chamber at that time. Now, in present day codes and standards, yeah, we've addressed this because of industry efforts of people like you and Jim Brewer and Dave Johnson and others that have worked with the building codes, that's in there. But again, we're back in the 1970s when this was built, and purging of that smoke chamber, it wasn't a requirement at the time. So in my opinion, we've got to inspect to the inspection standards at the time of construction, and then we've got to make recommendations to upgrade the installation to meet today's codes and standards. Do you agree with my thought processes?
For the most part, I do, Jerry. One of the things I think that people need to understand too is that if we go all the way back to the beginning when codes were enacted, when clay liners, what's the first one, like 1927 when they enacted code, when they put clay liners in?
Depends on where it was. In North Carolina, it was 1936. It depends where you were in the United States. In fact, some were into the 80s at some areas.
Yeah. But in each one of those cases, Jerry, one of the things that the overall summation was, the fireplace size had to be relations to the size of the damper. It has to be relations to the depth of the firebox. Also had to be the depth of the size of the smoke chamber. And again, back to the liner. At any of those times, even though there are differences in the wind codes, and certainly like you brought to that point concerning smoke chambers not being parged, we also realize too that it goes back to the basic question I write all my language in is, can the fireplace, can the appliance contain the products of combustion? Yes or no? Because the way the codes were written, even back in the early days, they said that the liners shall be placed on top of each other, that they're struck smooth and they're cleaned so that there is no obstruction or restriction to the flow of gases leaving the appliance. So those things are kind of like basic that we've pretty much been in the code. But again, like I said, when these things were adopted, like it's probably the later places, probably in the 70s, there's still people that were building chimneys just a solid brick and without a liner because no one knew any different. So you have to kind of know those. And again, that also relates back to Jerry, if you're going to be working with prefabricated fireplaces. In today's day, with the technology we have right now, it's just much easier to open the doors, pull the screens back, get the model number, the manufacturer's number, look it up on the internet, and you have the installation guide in front of you, and that way there you can go back and forth on in the realm of what you can see through the level 1, level 2 scope, and do a really good inspection to your best of your ability.
Right. So, like I said at the start of this, Tom and I were into a discussion today, and we have a special thing coming out because what we've done is we have scheduled a Tom and Jerry class. This is what a lot of people may call the Tom and Jerry show for years. Tom always got top billing in this for some reason, but we're going to be presenting another presentation of our course, Real World Chimney Inspections. And the date of this is going to be on Monday, April the 12th. And if you just watch, you're going to be finding links to sign up, those type of things. We'll be circulating emails, promoting this out through the industry. We're going to start that day at 10 a.m. Eastern time. That's right, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We kind of back the time through the day. So if you're on the West Coast, means, hey, you can join us at 7. If you'd like to we'd love to have you on. Rocky Mountains means you can join us at 8 o'clock Central Time, 9. And here on the East Coast, we'll be on at 10. We'll go until 4:30 Eastern time that day. That's correct, 4:30 that day. We'll take breaks about every hour, and we'll take a short lunch break through the day. This is a CEU approved course, and it's going to offer you 6 CEUs towards your certification. Now, here's the really neat thing about this. We teach this class as an instructor-led interactive training. And what that means is you can attend from any digital device, which is one way you can attend. Number 2, you can actually come right here to our studio in Concord, North Carolina. We now have classroom space in our recording studio that you could join us here, or Tom, they could come join you there at your lab, couldn't they? So if you're in the Midwest, yeah, you can come up to Tom's, you can catch the class live, spend some time with Tom in his lab, which is really neat, or you can come here and spend that time with us here in our teaching studio. So it's kind of up to you. So this is our invitation. We'd love to have you join us. And like I said, it's going to be a 6 CEU. And I want you to understand the following. This is a CBC Success Group presentation. And every presentation that we do, interactive, live, instructor-led, has a guarantee of value. If you attend this course and at the end of the course, you don't feel that you have gotten the value that we're promising you, all you got to do is tell us. We're going to refund you 100% of your tuition fee that you paid to attend this course. Tom, that's a pretty good deal. That's a kind of a satisfaction guarantee. No questions asked. All you got to do is say, Jerry, I didn't get the value. We're going to write you a refund for that. I think that's a pretty stout deal right there. Tom, what you think?
I agree, Jerry. That's a great deal.
Yeah, so we hope you'll sign up for us. You'll be seeing links on this as you go through over the next month. Again, the date is Monday, April the 12th. We'll start at 10 a.m. Eastern time that day. We'll go to 4:30 p.m. In addition to that, Tom, there's going to be testing on this class, and we're going to assign you to this course on our virtual platform. So in order to get your completion certificate, and this is a great thing for you guys that are sending your employees they're going to have to pass a test at the end of this. Tom and I are going to put together a proficiency test where they're going to have to answer the questions. There's going to have to be a minimum score. And there's other things that we do in our interactive instructor-led training to guarantee that your people get true value of this. Tom and I, we've been teaching this material for years. But Tom, one thing's different. We continuously change what we're teaching through what you and I learned through our training. Would you agree?
Jerry, I think anytime that anybody puts something into a book, they should put it in a binder, because this industry is changing so rapidly, and the new information that we find that, it just whatever you put together sometimes can be 6 months old and it needs to be re-upped. So
Yeah.
I think it's definitely keeping it up to stage. The things that you and I learn, we pass these on to other people. So yeah, you're right. It's a very dynamic application.
That's it. So anyway, there it is. It's out on the table for you. Mark your calendars. It is on Monday, April the 12th. It'll be Tom Urban, Jerry Eisenhower, and we're going to be sharing with you all the information we can that we've accumulated in that 6 hours. And here's the other neat thing about this. Tom, sometimes you and I may not agree sometimes in a class. Right. You're going to get two distinctly different points of view, because that's the world we live in. What you've got to be able to do is analyze, diagnose what's there, and you've got to form your opinions of what you're finding, because that's what you're presenting is your professional opinion that you put together based on your observations and learning how to properly document this. So we look forward to joining you. Hope you'll be in our class. And with that, we'll see you later. Appreciate you spending time with us for a few minutes this afternoon.